At this point, you should have VirtualBox installed for your operating system. The next thing we're going to do is download CentOS from CentOS.org. We'll click on the Get CentOS Now button, or whatever the link to the download section of the website happens to be at the time you watch this video. You'll notice that you have a few options here. The DVD ISO is perfect for what we're about to do. This DVD image contains all the packages that can be installed using the installer. So we're going to click on DVD ISO to download that. Go ahead and pick a mirror and click download there. Save the file. I'm going to go back to the previous page and let's talk about the Everything ISO and the Minimal ISO. So the Everything ISO contains the complete set of packages for CentOS. You would use this image if you wanted to create a local mirror of CentOS packages, for example. Finally, the Minimal ISO will allow you to install a very basic CentOS system. If you use this image, it won't install a graphical user environment. If you wanted a graphical user environment and almost any other type of software, you would have to install it manually after the initial OS install. So again, the best choice for us is the DVD ISO. Once we have our ISO downloaded, we're ready to create a virtual machine. Go ahead and start the VirtualBox application. Now we're going to create a container or a virtual machine for our CentOS operating system install. You can see here that when I click the New button, it asks us for a few bits of information. I'm going to name my system CentOS Desktop. As I type the name of my system in, VirtualBox detected that it was CentOS, and so it automatically selected Linux as the type and Red Hat as the version. Now, this is what we want when we're doing a CentOS installation. Now, remember that CentOS is a Red Hat Linux derivative, so that's the version we're going to tell VirtualBox that we're using. If VirtualBox didn't automatically select the type or version for you, you can simply click on it and select the type from the list, which again is Linux, or the version here, which is Red Hat 64-bit. I'm going to go ahead and click Continue and go to the next step. Here it's saying the recommended memory size is 1024 megabytes, which is 1 gigabyte. You can see that in my system here I have 16,384 megabytes, or 16 gigabytes about, and so I'm going to dedicate about half my resources to this virtual machine. So I'm going to use 8192. And so if you have, say, 4 gig of RAM, maybe you could devote 2 gig to your virtual machine, etc. So we'll click Continue to continue. And what we need to do now is create a hard disk, a virtual hard disk for this system. Go ahead and click Create. At this step, you want to choose the hard disk type. We're going to leave it at the default of VDI, a VirtualBox disk image. At this point, we have two choices. One is dynamically allocated and the other is fixed size. If your primary concern is about preserving disk space or using as little disk space as possible, choose dynamically allocated. However, if you're looking for better performance, use fixed size. I'm going to go ahead and use dynamically allocated. Press Continue here. And now we need to specify a size for our disk. I'm going to specify 100 gigabytes for my hard drive, although 8 gigabytes is sufficient to install CentOS to. I like having some additional space, so that's why I'm going with a larger size. So we'll click Create. So now we have our virtual machine. Next, we need to install CentOS. So let's power on the virtual machine to do that. You can either click Start at the top or right-click and press Start like I'm going to do. I'll do a normal start. Now it's going to ask us for a disk image to boot this system from. And what you want to do is click on the folder icon and navigate to the location that you downloaded the ISO from CentOS.org. So I'll click on that and click here and click Open. And now we'll hit Start to boot the system. You'll notice that you have a couple of options. The Check Media and Install CentOS is highlighted. What this will do is make sure that the image you are using isn't corrupted, the ISO image that you downloaded from CentOS.org. I recommend going with the default here, so press Enter to start the installation. So I'll click inside the virtual machine and then press Enter. you'll see that the system starts to boot and then it starts checking the media or the ISO image that we're using to do the installation. Here is the first install screen. There's a button at the bottom of this installation screen that I can't even see. I want to make sure that I see everything that CentOS is showing me, so I'm going to put this virtual machine into scaled mode. What this will do is fit the virtual machine screen inside my VirtualBox window, so I can make the window as small or as large as I want, and I can still see the entire screen of the virtual machine. Since we've already clicked inside the virtual machine window, the virtual machine has control over the mouse and keyboard. So anything that I type or any mouse movements that I make are going to the virtual machine. To get control back to the host system, we need to press the host key, which is a special key reserved for VirtualBox actions. By default, the host key is the left command key on a Mac, and on Windows, it's the right control key. Even if it's something different, you can always tell what the host key is by looking in the bottom right of your VM window. I'm on a Mac, and so you can see that left followed by the command symbol is displayed in the bottom right of the VM window. When I press that designated host key, the control of the mouse and keyboard are returned to the host computer. I'll do that now. Now I can go to the View menu and select Scaled Mode. On a Windows system, you'll go to the View menu that is in the menu bar at the top of your VM window and select Scaled Mode. VirtualBox will tell you how to get out of this scaled mode if you want to. It says press Host plus C, and it tells you what the host key is currently set to. I'm going to go ahead and click on switch to scaled mode. Now I can see the entire screen of the virtual machine in my window. So now I'm just going to increase the size of the window so I can really see what's going on inside the virtual machine. At this point, I'll click in the virtual machine, and now the virtual machine has control of my mouse and keyboard. So now I'm just going to mouse over the continue button and click to start the installation. On this installation summary screen, we can go through each item if we want and make some changes. For example, the date and time is set to America's New York for me. If you wanted to change this, you would simply click on that and then select your place in the world and then click Done. So I'm just going to leave it as America's New York and I'll click Done. And again, the same thing with the keyboard and the language support. The one thing that we really need to change is the software selection. So make sure to click on this. So what we want is a graphical user environment. So let's click on GNOME Desktop here. And then there are some add-ons to the right. These are optional. However, there is one that I want you to click because we're going to be using some of the software that gets included there in just a few minutes. So head on over to the right side of the screen and make sure that the development tools are checked. So when we've done that, we'll just go up here and click Done. And then the installation destination, we'll click on that. And then you can see that it automatically selects our virtual hard disk. So when we're doing this installation, it may say that we're going to overwrite everything on the hard disk. Well, it's going to overwrite everything on the virtual hard disk. And that is just fine. So everything looks good on the screen. There's nothing to change. You just need to go in here and confirm. So we'll click Done. So now it gives us the option to begin installation, and that's what we're going to do. We'll click that button. On this screen, you can do two things here. The first thing is set a root password, which we'll go ahead and do. We'll click on that. And then you're going to set a password for the root account. And we'll be talking about the root account later in this course. So just go ahead and pick a password and be sure to remember that password. And then we'll click on Done. Now, if you choose a weak password, it will make you press Done twice to confirm that you're going with a less secure password. So in any case, we'll click Done. So now we have the option of creating a user, and we want to go ahead and do that as well. So we'll just mouse over to the right there and click on User Creation. So here is where you'll enter your information for your personal account on this system. So I'm going to enter my name. And you want to make sure that you check this box that says make this user administrator. Checking that box will make it easier for you to do things on the system, such as install software and do other kind of administrative tasks like that. We'll be covering that later in this course as well. So now we need to supply a password. And then that's all we need to do on this screen. We'll click Done, and then we'll just wait for CentOS to perform its installation. Now that the main installation is done, we need to go ahead and reboot the system and finish up the installation. So I'll go ahead and click on the Reboot button now. When the system first boots, you may need to accept the license information. So right here, we just hit 1 and press Enter. And now we'll enter 2 to accept the license agreement. And now we just press C to continue. And then now that the license information has been accepted, you'll see an X instead of an exclamation mark there beside number 1 license information. And so we're done with this. So we can hit C to continue and complete our first boot into CentOS. Now that the system is booted up, I'm going to go ahead and log in as myself here. When you first log in, it'll ask you to confirm your language. I'm English, so that's already selected, and I'll click Next here. It'll also ask you about your keyboard layout, and English US is checked, and that's what I'm using, so I'm going to click Next. And now we're all set. The installation is complete, so I'll just click Start using CentOS now. Now this Getting Started screen is displayed, and so you can take some time and read through some of the documentation and watch some of the videos, for example. And so at this point, the installation is really complete. So our job would be done right here if we're running on physical hardware, such as a desktop, a laptop, or a server. However, since we're using a virtual machine, we need to perform one additional step. That additional step is to install some software that helps Linux understand the virtual hardware that it's working with. And that piece of software is called VirtualBox Guest Editions. Now what we need to do is insert the guest edition CD image and install those guest editions. So I'm going to press the host key to get control of the keyboard and mouse. And now I'm going to go to the devices menu and click Insert Guest Editions CD image. You'll see a pop-up that asks you if you'd like to run the software that's on this image, and we do. So I'm going to click inside the virtual machine here to get the mouse control back to the virtual machine. I'm going to hover over Run and click it. Now we need to enter our password for the account. Since we have administrative privileges that we specified during the installation, we can do things such as install software, which is what we're doing now. So I'll just go ahead and enter in my password. Click on Authenticate. And now the guest editions will be installed. Guest Editions requires that the development tools were installed. And if you remember when we selected the software for the installation, we checked the checkbox beside development tools. So if you have problem installing the Guest Editions, you need to make sure that that was checked during your installation. So now that the installation is done, we can press Return to close the window. So I'm going to go ahead and X out of the Getting Started, and I'm actually going to reboot the virtual machine to show you what happens when you have Guest Editions installed. So I'm going to click in the right part of the screen, hit the power button here, and I'll just do a restart. Go ahead and log in again. So I'm going to press the host key again to get control of the mouse, and I'm going to go to the menu here, and then I'm going to click View and take us out of scaled mode. So I'm just going to hit scaled mode there, and then the screen will snap to a smaller size. And so what's interesting now is the resolution is better. So now I can take the screen and drag it to whatever size I want. And now the graphics in the desktop look a lot better than they did on first installation and in that scaled mode. So one of the things that the VirtualBox Guest Editions does is provide a better display experience for you. Okay, that wraps up the manual installation of CentOS.